Hello, welcome to it. The GOODREADS Choice Awards for 2024 have been announced. We're in the opening round, which runs for the next 12 to 13 days, November 12th to the 24th. I am cautiously excited. I did take a peek through the romance category earlier, and I was pleasantly surprised by the diversity there. Now, let's be real, the Goodreads Choice Words could always be more diverse because our reading could be more diverse because it's a popularity contest. And we all know that right now, the most popular books tend to be about cis straight white people. And while those stories matter, so do the others. So, that's my shtick. I also will say I am sad to see that the children's section is still gone. The poetry section is still gone. They've added audiobooks, which I'm not mad about, generally speaking. But it just feels, I don't know, things are missing. And it also feels like the comedy section is still missing. And you can very much tell in some of the nonfiction and memoir categories. So we'll see. But let's get into it. So we're going to start at fiction and then work our way around and just go through these and just talk about them, whether or not I've read them, and if I'm interested. A little TBR moment. And that will be a little Easter egg for video number 2. So first up, reader's favorite fiction. We have Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. This is a sequel to There There. Even though it's not listed as on Goodreads, like it very much is. This one I am cautiously interested in. I have not read There. I want to. Tommy Orange's books tend to lean a little more historical fiction, which I generally do not like, but I've heard his writing is incredible, so I may give that a shot. I also am cautiously interested in All Fours by Miranda July. This one has kind of mid reviews. It's at a 3.73 rating, almost 50,000 ratings, and is about, I believe, a divorcee who's also an artist. This one has been making the rounds for, is it the Booker? It's shortlisted for a few things. I don't know if, I don't know. Same as It Ever Was by Claire Lombardo. She feels like an up-and-coming Swiss Army knife recommendation author. And what I mean by that is when your mom asks you for a book rec, or your aunt, or some woman at work, or, you know, somebody that you're like, ooh, I don't know enough about your reading taste, or I don't want to offend you by my proclivities. What's a safe thing to give you? And I feel like Claire Lombardo is kind of in that because she tends to write these domestic, family, sweeping, sometimes multi-generational, or sometimes multi-family novels. I am interested to try her, though, because I have not yet, and several years ago I read a book by Mary Beth Keane, whose title I can't remember right now, but I will put the cover here. And I have been searching for a book that will make me feel that way again, and I think that a Claire Lombardo might do it. So next up we have Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. I have heard so many good things about this book. It has a 4.23 rating. It is at only 28,000 ratings. I say only, but for fiction, I feel like that's a little low. I feel like they tend to be higher than that. This follows Cyrus Shams. He's a young man grappling with an inheritance of violence and loss. His mother's plane was shot down over the skies of Tehran in a senseless accident, and his father's life in America was circumscribed by his work killing chickens at a factory farm in the Midwest. Cyrus is a drunk, an addict, and a poet whose obsession with martyrs leads him to examine the mysteries of his past. Toward an uncle who rode through Iranian battlefields dressed as an angel of death to inspire and comfort the dying, and towards his mother through a painting discovered in a Brooklyn art gallery that suggests she may not have been who or what she seemed. That sounds incredible. That's definitely going on my TBR. So, the order changes when you... Okay, we won't be doing that again. So, let's see. Since the order changed, we have I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. I have not heard of this one. I'm going to do new tabs for these. And hopefully this loads. Goodreads is having a hard time with all of us rushing this website. Perfect for fans of anxious people, and Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. Both books that I very much enjoyed, and I think gave 4 to 4.5 stars for each of those. In this wildly funny and heartwarming office comedy, an admin worker accidentally gains access to her colleagues' private emails and DMs and decides to use this intel to save her job. A laugh till you cry debut novel. I don't want to read any more of the synopsis. I'm sold. I'm sold. We're going to mark that as want to read. Dolly Alderton, good material. I have yet to read a Dolly Alderton book. Her covers very much stick out to me, and I think, ooh, maybe one day this will be for me. But I just have yet to find one where the synopsis really grabs me. It says, Andy loves Jen. Jen loved Andy, and he can't work out why she stopped. Now he is without a home, waiting for his stand-up career to take off, wondering why everyone else around him seems to have grown up while he wasn't looking. Set adrift on the sea of heartbreak, Andy clings to the idea of solving the puzzle of his ruined relationship. Because if he can find the answer to that, then maybe Jen can find her way back to him. But Andy still has a lot to learn, and not least his ex-girlfriend's side of the story. Maybe. Okay, Sandwich by Catherine Newman. This has been on my TBR, and I actually think I might have just got this on a Kindle Daily Deal sale. This book is really short, 229 pages. Love that. It says, for the past 2 decades, Rocky has looked forward to her family's yearly escape to Cape Cod. Their humble beach town rental has been the site of sweet memories, sunny days, great meals, and messes of all kinds. Emotional, marital, and, thanks to the cottage's ancient plumbing, septic too. This year's vacation with Rocky sandwiched between her half-grown kids and fully aging parents promises to be just as delightful as summer's past, except perhaps for Rocky's hormonal bouts of rage and melancholy. Hello, menopause. Her body is changing, her life is too. And then a chain of events sends Rocky into the past, reliving both the tenderness and sorrow of a handful of long-ago summers. It's one precious week. Everything is in balance. Everything is in flux. And when Rocky comes face to face with her family's history and future, she is forced to accept that she can no longer hide her secrets from the people she loves. Yeah, I'm very interested in that. I go through these periods of time where I want to read about a main character, specifically a female main character, who is older than me by maybe 10 to 15 years. Sometimes a little more than that, in a way to start looking at what my life could look like in those aspects, or things that I just wouldn't think about. But sometimes I also just miss maturity in the stories that I'm reading. And something about this feels like it's going to be right up my alley. Having multiple generations of family in one house, the shortened condensed time, it sounds like there's a gentle weaving of the aging parents, I imagine teenage kids, and just kind of dealing with what it's like to be in limbo. That sounds like it's for me. So now we have The Wedding People by Alison Espach. This has been on my TBR for a minute. I just haven't really gotten there yet. It says, a propulsive and uncommonly wise novel about one unexpected wedding guest and the surprising people who help us start anew. It's a beautiful day in Newport, Rhode Island, when Phoebe Stone arrives at the Grand Cornwall Inn wearing a green dress and gold heels, not a bag in sight, alone. She's immediately mistaken by everyone in the lobby as one of the wedding people, but she's actually the only guest at the Cornwall who isn't there for the big event. Phoebe is here because she dreamt of coming here for years, and she hoped to shuck oysters and take sunset sails with her husband, only now she's here without him. Meanwhile, the bride has accounted for every detail and every possible disaster the weekend might yield, except for, well, Phoebe. Which makes it that much more surprising when the women can't stop confiding in each other. Absurdly funny and devastatingly tender. Yeah, this one's going on here. Margot's Got Money Trouble is also on the list of my TBR. 3.93 rating, average rating, and 46,000 ratings. 7,500 reviews. It says it's bold, laugh out loud funny, and heartwarming story about one young woman's attempt to navigate adulthood, new motherhood, and her meager bank account in our increasingly online world. From the PEN Faulkner finalist and critically acclaimed author of The Knockout Queen, which I also have heard really good things about. Yeah, 304 pages. Sign me up. Also snagged this on a Kindle Daily Deal the other day. I'm glad I did, because I'm going to be reading some of these. The Mighty Red by Louise Erdrich. I didn't realize that Louise Erdrich had a new book coming out this year. No, I did. I just didn't realize it was out yet. Shout out to Book Riot and them doing their It Books of the Month, because that is exactly how I found out that this book existed. I don't know if I'm going to want to read this, if I'm being quite honest. I read my first Erdrich last year, and it was her most recent book up until this point. And it was good. I just don't know if Louise Erdrich is for me. I would like to try some of her older works and see, but I don't know that this is my vibe right now. It doesn't feel like it is. Same with Leanne Moriarty. I have read a lot of her stuff, and she has become one of those authors that where like you see that she has a new book out, you're like, cool, there's a new Leanne Moriarty. Maybe one day if I'm like bored or going on a trip or something and I just need like an airport book, sure, but I don't care. The Playground by Richard Powers. I have heard this name before. I have never read anything by Richard Powers. His 4 lives are drawn together in a sweeping panoramic new novel from Richard Powers, showcasing the Pulitzer Prize-winning author of The Overstory at the height of his skills. 12-year-old Evie sinks to the bottom of a swimming pool in Montreal, strapped to one of the world's first aqualungs. Ina Arroita grows up on naval bases across the Pacific with art as her only home. Two polar opposites at an elite Chicago high school bond over a 3,000-year-old board game. Ralphie Young will get lost in literature while Todd Keene's work will lead to a startling AI breakthrough. Interesting. So lots of overlapping stories. Only 381 pages. If done right, can be pulled off very well. This is a 4.29 rating, only 4,500, or 4.29 average rating with only 4,500 ratings, which means this book just came out roughly September 24th. Okay. I'm always interested in how Goodreads picks the books for these categories. That's my other beef. If you guys could just stop doing the awards in the last quarter of the year, wait till January. Why not wait till January when we all have the blues and we need something to look forward to? Bring me your choice awards in January or February, okay? Give me time to read all of the books that came out in 2024 that I wanted to read. Because there are some that like aren't on this list because they literally came out like last week or today. It's November 12th. Books are still coming out. Anyway, that's my beef. Ilin Hildebrand, she's for a brand of lady, and that brand of lady is not me. Greta and Walden by Rebecca Riley. It says an irresistible and big-hearted international bestseller that follows a brother and sister as they navigate queerness, multiracial identity, and the dramas, big and small, of their entangled, unconventional lives. I'll take it. We're going to put that on Want to Read. That one has 13,000 ratings, a 4.03 average. Not bad. Sally Rooney's Intermezzo. I have yet to read a Sally Rooney book. I don't know if I will. I put this on my Want to Read, and I actually got a copy of it the day it came out on Libby, which is crazy. And then I found out that the version I got was a read it in the Libby app only, and I was not about to read that book on my phone. I wasn't going to do it. Couldn't. So I gave it back. Real Americans by Rachel Kong. I have seen this cover a lot. I have not read the synopsis. I have no idea what this is about. And I don't know if it's something that I would want to read. I've never read anything by Rachel Kong. It says Real Americans begins on the precipice of Y2K in New York City when 22-year-old Lily Chen, an unpaid intern at a slick media company, meets Matthew. Matthew's everything Lily is not. Easygoing and effortlessly attractive, a native East Coaster, and most notably, heir to a vast pharmaceutical empire. Ooh, a Nepo baby. Okay. Lily couldn't be more different. Flat broke, raised in Tampa, and the only child of scientists who fled Mao's Cultural Revolution. Despite all of this, Lily and Matthew fall in love. In 2021, 15-year-old Nick Chen has never felt like he belonged on the isolated Washington island where he lives with his single mother, Lily. He can't shake the sense she's hiding something. And when Nick sets out to find his biological father, the journey threatens to raise more questions than answers. In immersive, moving prose, Rachel Kong weaves a profound tale of class and striving, race and visibility, and family and inheritance. A story of trust, forgiveness, and finally coming home. 416 pages. I'm going to add that to Want to Read. Fiction, historical fiction, audiobook, literary fiction, contemporary, magical realism. I might check that out. That sounds really good. I've also seen this cover a lot. Welcome to the Hyundong Bookshop. 4.0 average rating, 31,000 total ratings. Youngjun is burned out with her high-flying career, demanding marriage, and busy life in Seoul. She knows she could feel successful. But all she feels is drained. Yet an abandoned dream nags at her, and in a leap of faith, she leaves her old life behind. After quitting her job and divorcing her husband, Youngjun moves to a small residential neighborhood outside the city, where she opens the Hyundong bookshop. Yeah, I could be into that. Blue Sisters, I already have this on my want to read list. I think I just snagged a e-copy of this. That also could have been her other book, which I still haven't. I've read like 50 pages of her last book of Cleopatra and Frankenstein. It says there are three Blue Sisters are exceptional and exceptionally different. Avery, the eldest and a recovering heroin addict turned straight-laced lawyer, lives with her wife in London. Bonnie, a former boxer, works as a bouncer in Los Angeles following a devastating defeat. And Lucky, the youngest, models in Paris while trying to outrun her hard-parting ways. They also had a fourth sister, Nikki, whose unexpected death left Avery, Bonnie, and Lucky reeling. A year later, as they each navigate grief, addiction, and ambition, they find they must return to New York to stop the sale of the apartment they were once raised in. But coming home is never as easy as it seems, as the sisters reckon with disappointment of their childhood and the loss of the only person who held them together. They realize the greatest secrets they've been keeping might not have been from each other, but for themselves. I love a book about siblings, and something about a book about siblings and also set in New York, it makes me think of a book whose title I can't think of right now. The Nest, maybe? I read earlier this year and really liked it, and it was a similar situation where it's four siblings coming together after a chaotic thing happens. I'm into it. Going on my TBR. Color Television by Danzy Senna. I have yet to read anything by Danzy Senna. I have another book by her on here, Caucasia, I think. I have a physical copy of. I also recently learned that she is Percival Everett's wife. Absolutely wild. I want to know what the dinner conversations in their home is like. So Color Television is a dark comedy about second acts, creative appropriation, and the racial identity industrial complex. It says Jane has high hopes for her life. Her life is about to turn around. After years of living precariously, her painter husband Lenny, and their two kids have landed a stint as house sitters in a friend's luxurious home in the hills above Los Angeles. A gig that coincides magically with Jane's sabbatical. If she can just finish her latest novel, the century-spanning epic Lenny refers to as her mulatto War and Peace, she'll have tenure and some semblance of stability and success within her grasp. I could be into that. Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. Elizabeth Strout's another author that I have never read anything from. Ooh, this is a fifth in a series, so I will not be reading this. I have been interested in her, like, Olive Kittredge world, if you will, because I think all of these books are interconnected. I don't know if you have to read them in order or not. Some of them I think you do, and that's not a game I would like to play right now. So those were the fiction categories. I am not going to vote on any of these right now, and I'll explain why. So then we have historical fiction, which I can almost guarantee I read nothing from. And actually, I think that was the same from the fiction category. I think I hadn't read anything from it. I think everything was want to read or have no interest in. That's wild. So we're at 0 for fiction. Let's check out historical fiction. Ooh, okay. A couple of things that I am lightly interested in. Top row, I don't recognize anything but the women. I'm not interested in the women. I am always interested in Silvia Moreno Garcia. I have yet to read anything from her, but I will one day. I'm just going to mark it want to read, sight unseen. It's going to happen. James by Percival Everett, I think I have the audiobook for. This is a reimagining of Huckleberry Finn. I haven't read Huck Finn in like 15 years, but I have been told that you don't have to read and enjoy the story. That one's definitely, that one's getting read by me at some point in the next 3 to 6 months, if not sooner. Same thing with the Lion Women of Tehran. I don't know why I haven't read this yet. I loved Marjan Kamali's The Stationery Shop. That was one of my favorite books in like 2021, I think. It was absolutely perfect. Had the best time. It was harrowing. Husbands and Lovers. I don't think... This cover I see all the time, but I don't think I've read the synopsis of this. Let's see. Two women separated by decades and contents and united by a mysterious family heirloom discover second chances at love in this sweeping novel from the New York Times bestselling author of The Summer Wives. Interesting. Oh, and it's dual timeline in 1951 and 2022. I don't know how I feel about that. Well, this is all the historical fiction category, so obviously, and that's where I get paused. Yeah, the rest of these, nothing that I have. Actually, I take that back. Elif Shafak and Xochitl Gonzalez. I am interested in both of their titles. I have yet to read anything by Elif Shafak, but I will correct that. Island of Missing Trees has been on my TBR for a hot minute. Ancient City of Nineveh on the River Tigris. Yeah. I think this might be a reimagining of some potentially biblical history in that, given the city of Nineveh has big historical references in there. But this is 3 timelines, 4. This sounds like a cry for an audiobook for me. 4.49 average rating, 7,100 ratings total. This came out when? August 20th. Okay. And then Anita DeMonte Laughs Last. Excuse me. A memorizing story about a first-generation Ivy League student who uncovers the genius work of a female artist decades after her suspicious death. Sounds like it could be for me. A 3.8 rating is a little low to me for a Goodreads Choice Awards nominee, but this is the historical fiction category, and I feel like it's often kind of light, so I'm not totally surprised. Another category where I have read 0 books. Mystery thriller. Let's see if I've read any of these. I doubt it. I have no desire to ever read a Frida McFadden book. Apologies, but also not. Richard Osman, kind of the same thing. I think I really what I want. I want to read the Thursday Murder Club books with my grandfather if I can force him to read. He used to read a lot, and he doesn't really as much anymore that he's retired, despite having so much time to read. So I'm trying to bully him into reading the Thursday Murder Club with me. I will let you know if I'm successful. Rachel Hawkins and I have a questionable history. I have not really enjoyed a lot of her books, so I will be skipping that. First Line Wins had a massive moment at the beginning of this year. It has almost 500,000 ratings. That's wild. And a 4.03 rating, average rating. So this is on my want to read list. It says E.B. Porter has everything a nice Southern girl could want. A perfect doting boyfriend, a house with a white picket fence and a garden, and a fancy group of friends. The only catch, E.B. Porter doesn't exist. And I shan't be reading another word of that synopsis because that sounds great and I want to check that out. I really want to check that out. Sally Hepworth, hit or miss for me, so we will be skipping this. Sarah Pekkanen burned her bridge with me during her Sarah Pekkanen Greer Hendricks dual author book time. No thank you. I have yet to read anything by Jason Rekulik. I don't know if I will. The Last One at the Wedding. Let's see what this is about. A 3.6 average rating is rough to me. In mystery thriller, like, to me, that means, like, that may as well be a 3. Like, people have either loved it or they have hated it. Which is something I tend to like in mystery thrillers, where I want people to have either loved it or hated it, because when it's, like, a tepid meh, which is what a 3.68 gives me, is, like, it's meh, is not great to me. Frank Zatowski is shocked when his daughter Maggie calls him for the first time in 3 years. He was convinced that their estrangement would become permanent. He's even more surprised when she invites him to her upcoming wedding in New Hampshire. Frank is ecstatic and determined to finally make things right. He arrives to find that the wedding's at a private estate, very secluded, very luxurious, and very much out of his league. It seems that Maggie failed to mention she's marrying Aidan Gardner, the son of a famous tech billionaire. Feeling desperately out of place, Frank focuses on reconnecting with Maggie and getting to know her new family. But it's difficult. Aidan is withdrawn and evasive. Maggie doesn't seem to have time for him. And he finds that the locals are disturbingly hostile to the Gardners. Frank needs to know more about the family his daughter's marrying into, but if he pushes too hard, he could lose Maggie forever. Conceptually, that feels like it could be my vibe. But I don't know. We're going to close that out. Laura Dave, I've seen her covers around. I've never really had an interest in reading her stuff. Same thing with Geneva Rose. This looks like every generic. So I don't. The Return of Ellie Black by Amiko Jean, Detective Chelsea Calhoun's life is turned upside down. I don't really love detective-based thrillers or mysteries. I don't. Middle of the Night, I feel obligated because it's a Riley Sager, and I think I've read every Riley Sager with the exception of the one that came out last year and then the one that came out this year. I read one book of this category. I read Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, and I gave it 4 stars. Okay, we're on the board. I've read one book. Look at that. And I've read half a book almost. Well, maybe call it a quarter. I read a quarter of The God of the Woods, and then my Libby time ran out, and so then I had to give it back. But I could venture back into that for sure. Lucy Foley. I've read one Lucy Foley book. I have. At 3.6 again, and at 107,000 ratings. Lucy, I don't know. All the Colors of the Dark. I actually won a copy of this in a giveaway on the Storygraph, I think. This book is 608 pages. I will eventually read this. I will. I've heard very good things about this, and it has to be for a 4.37 average rating after 116,000 people have delivered their ratings. That's really good. 1975 is a time for change in America. Vietnam War is ending. Muhammad Ali is fighting Joe Frazier, and in the small town of Montclair, Missouri, girls are disappearing. When the daughter of a wealthy family is targeted, the most unlikely hero emerges. Patch, a local boy with one eye, who saves the girl, and in doing so, leaves heartache in his wake. Patch and those who love him soon discover that the line between triumph and tragedy have never been finer, and that their search for answers will lead them to truths that could mean losing one another. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I could be into that, and you know what? I've had some good luck with Reader's Gen picks in the past. So that is an option. Okay, so now we're going to move on to romance, the category we've all been waiting for. I surprisingly have not read that much in this category this year. I have given up on Anna Wong. She and I, we don't get along. We just don't. I'm sorry. Leather and Lark I was supposed to read with my book club earlier this year. Didn't happen. I just never read it. I'll read it eventually. I heard it wasn't as good as Butcher and Blackbird, which is not surprising. I feel like when a book has a tone like that, it's hard to meet it on the second one because you're just chasing the high people felt on the first one. But I heard it was still good. This Could Be Us, I absolutely loved. Gave this... I didn't rate it on here. Interesting. Pretty sure I gave this 5 stars. Lies and Weddings by Kevin Kwan. I have not read anything from him since the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy, but I would be down to read again. Daydream by Hannah Grace is on my TBR. I hated Icebreaker. I loved Wildfire. And I read Wildfire right before Daydream came out, and I wanted to be fair to it in the same way that I wanted to be fair to Daydream after I read Icebreaker. And I took a several-month break in between Icebreaker and Wildfire, and I wanted to do the same thing between Wildfire and Daydream. So this is a contender for this category for me reading it. Same thing with The Pairing. I actually pre-ordered this book from Barnes & Noble, and I have it on my shelf on here somewhere behind me, and I want to read it. I absolutely loved Red, White, and Royal Blue. And I liked, I can't think of the title of the next one. The one that was like set in New York and it had a magical realism element to it. I liked that one. I haven't read I Kissed Shara Wheeler. A Love Song for Ricky Wilde. I started this at the beginning of the year and then I put it down. Not a DNF. It was just a right book, wrong time kind of a thing. So I could be interested in starting that one. I have no interest in How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwong. This girl falls in love with this boy who I think was a childhood best friend, but also was responsible for like the death of her sibling. Not into it for me. Christina Lauren, great author duo to get into if you're just starting to read romance, but it's not for me, babes. It's not for me. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez might be the best book I read this year. It might. It rivals Kennedy Ryan for me, and that is saying a lot because Kennedy can do no wrong in my eyes. Funny story, I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I know I'm going to read it. I know I'm going to listen to Julia Whalen read the audiobook. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. The Cinnamon Bun Store, listen, Lori Gilmore, I wish you all the success, but you're not getting me. You're not getting me, babes. It's not happening. Swift and Saddled, I rated 5 stars, I think out of my love for Lila Sage. But if I'm being very real, that was a 4-star book with a 3.5-star good time. But I love Wes and Ada. I do. I go back and I read what I highlighted from their books sometimes, and it was a good time. Play Along, I read and was pissed that I had such a good time with it, because Liz Tomford, this also doesn't have a rating. This also might be the versions that are on here, because I think they put the paperbacks on as the version for the Choice Awards, and I typically have read the ebook copy, and that's what Goodreads marks as my currently reading and rates on, and I hate that it doesn't just show you the rating, even though it's a different version of the book, but it's the same book. Anyway, gave that book 5 stars. It is the best book in that series. The rest of them can go. Ooh, Catherine Center and I, we don't have a good rapport. We don't. I have tried a few of her books, and each time I am sufficiently bored until about the halfway point, and then I'm like, this is fine. This is a good time, I guess. But I just don't love them. I had a damn good time with Bride. I gave this 5 stars. I do not regret a single thing. And then this bottom row, Not in Love's the only one I have interested in now, and it's because I loved Bride. If you had asked me before I read Bride, I would have told you no. But I'm into it. I might read that. Okay, on to Romantasy. Am I going to recognize anything? Okay, I do recognize Bait of the Sun King by Nisha Tooley. I have not read this series yet. Forever just sent me books 1 and 4. 1, because I said, they gave you this list if you're in their Discover Forever program, and they're like, hey, if you missed out on these books previously, let us know if you're interested. And I wanted to start the series, so I was like, hey, send me book 1. And then they also sent me book 4 because they were sending those out to people, and I'm interested. Blood of Hercules, I'm also seeing a lot. This got picked up by Harlequin Trade Press. I'm in the Hive. Shout out to the Hive. Love you guys. And have been seeing this everywhere, and I'm kind of interested. The Games God's Play, I just heard of actually from Reagan from Peru's Project. Just did a video where she was reading this in a weekend reading blog, and she didn't have the best time with it. But she also is one of those people that reads a ton of fantasy. 90% of her reading in a year is fantasy. So she's seen a ton of tropes around, knows what's good, knows what's not. Me, I would call myself a baby fantasy reader. This might be up my alley. I could be into this. And seeing that it's Percy Jackson for adults meets The Hunger Games with a slow burn romance, and there's a contest, marking that as want to read. And it's on Kindle Unlimited. I'm into it. Feybound is also on my TBR, has been for a hot minute. I don't know when I'm going to get to it. Maybe I'll read it for something. I don't know. Somebody just recommended The Spell Shop to me by Sarah Beth Durst. I think I might be cozy fantasy romance out. I think I might have read too many in a row when I did that Week of the Witch reading blog. I read a bunch, only had a good time with one of them. Maybe next fall. I have not heard of this. I refuse to touch JLA with a 10-foot pole. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Apprentice to the Villain, Assistant to the Villain's book 1. So I'm not going to read this because it's a sequel. But I don't know if that would be for me. Conceptually, it sounds fun, but I don't know if it would be for me. Zodiac Academy, not touching her with a 10-foot pole. Sorry, not sorry. Quicksilver is having a moment. I don't know if that moment is for me. Maybe. Same thing goes for Phantasma. It's having a moment. I don't know if that moment is for me. I have never heard of Gold by Raven Kennedy. That's a lie. My friend Nicole was screaming about these books in my texts a while back because she loves Raven Kennedy. This is a book 5 in a series. I'm not doing that for a video. Apologies to the TBR. Can't do it. Touch Chaos, book 4, not happening. Veiled Kingdom, book 1. This has been, I don't want to say it's been on my TBR per se. It kind of has in that it was on Kindle Unlimited, and I was like, this looks interesting. I don't know if I want to dive into those. Never heard of this. Don't know what that is. The Honey Witch, at this point, I think I have like 4 different versions of this book. I will get there. It was on the Libro FM ALC program, so I snagged it because I was like, this looks cute. I would like to read about this. And then I think I got an e-copy, and then maybe I have a physical copy somewhere. Maybe. A Fate in Ink and Blood I got in a Probably Smut book box, and I love the edition that I have on my shelf. I have yet to read this, mostly because I'm scared to ruin that edition, and I don't want to do that. So I think I'm going to check out the ebook from my library. House of Flame and Shadow. If you were here for the resurgence of my channel at the beginning of this year / late last year, you know that I attempted to read this series. It did not go well. I shan't be reading House of whatever the fuck. When the Moon Hatched, I have heard incredible things about. This has a 4.09 rating, 118,000 total ratings. And the parts that are in all caps here: magic, dragons, romance. Yes. This book is like 800 pages though, and that has been the pause for me. It's not 800 pages, it's 576 pages, which feels like 800 pages to me. Okay? It feels like 800 pages to me. I'll get there. But I have seen this book in person, both in the hardback and paperback versions, and just door knockers. That's a lot. That's a lot. So some things that we're interested in, nothing that we've read. I think I'm still at only 1 book read so far in this whole... That's a lie. I read some of the romance books. Editing Rebecca, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to do the counter up here and figure it out. Apologies. Okay. 5 Broken Blades. I pre-ordered, got it, still haven't read it. I'll get there. Yangzi Chu's The Foxwife. She wrote The Night Tiger, which is on my shelf. Haven't read it. Song to Drown the Rivers. Looks gorgeous. Never heard of it. Emily Wilde's. I still haven't read the first one. Somewhere Beyond the Sea, T.J. Klune. I don't know if I'm going to ever read another T.J. Klune book. I loved House in the Cerulean Sea. But the more I sit with the whole residential schools as inspiration deal without... He talked about it. The way it's portrayed in the book is not anything close to a residential school. There's some commentary about being othered, but it wasn't enough for me. The Night Ends with Fire by KX Song, I keep seeing on TikTok. And that has what stopped me from reading it, if I'm being very honest with you. I have not heard of really any of these other than The Familiar, which Leigh Bardugo and I haven't really had that great of a track record together, but I do want to try her again. I actually have Ninth House around here somewhere, and I'm going to give that a shot, because I feel like that's, if anything is going to work for me from her, it's going to be that. Haven't heard of any of these. Voyage of the Damned, I loved, gave 5 stars. Had a fantastic time with that. And then Academy of Liars, I've heard really good things about. I have yet to read anything by Alexis Henderson, but maybe one day soon. You never know. So science fiction. This, I think, has the most books that I want to read in it. I have read and loved Annie Bot. I want to read The Other Valley. This is about a isolated neighborhood. It's a speculative novel, and it has a mirror of itself across the border, but you have to get permission to cross the border. And the mirrored version has... what's the word I'm looking for? People who have died in version 1 of the town are alive in version 2. And so you can get permissions to go over there and visit them, but then there are rules, very like butterfly effect like. I'm very interested. Ministry of Time, I keep seeing the cover around, but I don't know how I feel about a time travel romance. I don't love the idea of time travel. I love the idea of time travel. I never like the execution. Sky Full of Elephants, I actually have checked out from the library and haven't started yet. The premise of this book is that white people no longer exist in the United States. They all go walk into the nearest body of water and they're just gone. And there's this man, Charlie Burton, who I think was a college professor, but then I think also ends up doing some prison time. And his half white, half black daughter ends up coming to live with him because all of her immediate family is gone because she's been with her mom. And you just kind of figure out how they learn to live in that society and whether or not it is truly better with the predominant society being gone. The Mercy of Gods by James A. Corey. I actually thought that this was a part of the Expanse series, but this is actually the first book in a new series from this author duo. I thought James S. A. Corey was one person, but it is two. It looks interesting to me, but I'm probably not going to read it if I'm being very honest. I Cheerfully Refuse, I also keep seeing, and I didn't know that this was a science fiction book. I thought it might be literary fiction. So interesting. Oh, Dystopia. It says, set in a not too distant America, I Cheerfully Refuse is a tale of Rainey, an inspiring musician, setting sail on Lake Superior in search of his departed, deeply beloved book-selling wife. An endearing bear of an Orphean narrator, he seeks refuge in the harbors, fogs, and remote islands of the inland sea. After encountering lunatic storms and rising corpses from the warming depths, he eventually lands to find an incessantly desperate and illiterate people, a malignant billionaire ruling class, a crumbled infrastructure, and a lawless society. As his guileless nature begins to make an inadvertent rebel of him, Rainey's private quest for the love of his life grows into something wider and wilder, sweeping up friends and foes in his wake. Wow. Okay, want to read? Let's check that out. That sounds great. Baby X. Biological matter can be used to create life. Stolen celebrity DNA goes to the highest bidder or the craziest stalker in this propulsive thriller. Okay, I marked this as want to read at some point. The Family Experiment I actually had an arc of, and I started reading it and then put it down for some reason. Maybe we'll pick that back up. This is a similar kind of thing where, also about weird baby things. So, it says some families are virtually perfect. I believe this is one where people can pay a monthly subscription for an AI generated baby or something because of overpopulation. Yeah, world's population is soaring, creating overcrowded cities in an economic crisis, and in the UK, the breaking point has arrived. A growing number of people can no longer afford to start families, let alone raise them. But for those desperate to experience parenthood, there is an alternative. For a monthly subscription fee, clients can create a virtual child from scratch who they can access via the metaverse and a VR headset. To launch this new initiative, the company behind Virtual Children has created a reality show called The Substitute. It will follow 10 couples as they raise a virtual child from birth to the age of 18, but in a condensed 9-month time period. The prize, the right to keep their virtual child or risk it all for the chance of a real baby. That is wild. I don't know why I put that down. I'm into it. Okay, so on to horror. I can almost guarantee I have read nothing from here. Yeah, I have read nothing, but I'm going to talk to you about the books that are on my TBR. So we have The Eyes Are the Best Part. I saw Kayla from Books and Lala read and love this, and something about the way she was talking about it just grabbed my attention. It says, Crying in H Mart meets My Sister the Serial Killer. Both books that I loved. In this feminist psychological horror about the making of a female serial killer from a Korean American perspective. Ji-woon's life tumbles into disarray in the wake of her appa's extramarital affair and subsequent departure. Her mother distraught. Her younger sister hurt and confused. Her college freshman grades failing. Her dreams horrifying yet enticing. In them, Ji-woon walks through bloody rooms full of eyes. Succulent blue eyes, salivating blue eyes the same shape and shade as George's, who is Amma's obnoxious new boyfriend. George has already overstayed his welcome in the family's claustrophobic apartment. He brags about his puffed-up consulting job, ogles Asian waitresses while dining out, and acts condescendingly towards Ji-woon and her sister as if he deserves all of Amma's fawning adoration. No, George doesn't deserve anything from her family, and Ji-woon will make sure of that. 278 pages. I'm here for it. Chuck Tingle's Bury Your Gaze, also on my radar. This is about a jaded scriptwriter, and he is told to take out the gay character by the producers, and Misha discovers that it's just not that simple, and he's haunted by his past mistakes. Misha must stake everything to find a way to do what's right before it's too late. And at a smooth 295 pages. If you can't tell, I love the idea of a short book. I really do. We Used to Live Here is on my TBR. A lesbian couple owns this home, and a man shows up with his family and says that they used to live there before, and things get really weird as he shows his kids around the house. That's all I'm going to say about it, and that's all I know about it. I don't want to read the synopsis for fear of being spoiled about things. And then these next two, I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I have yet to read anything by Stephen Graham Jones. This is another one where I was influenced by Kayla from Books on Lala to check this out. 1989, La Mesa, Texas, a small West Texas town driven by cotton and oil, and a place where everyone knows everyone else's business. So it goes for Tully Driver, a good kid with more potential than application, 17 and about to be cursed to kill for revenge. Okay. And then So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. While labeled a horror, I've heard is more paranormal thriller vibes. It says Sloane Parker is dreading her birthday. She doesn't need a reminder she's getting older or that she feels indifferent about her own life. Her husband surprises her with a birthday weekend getaway. Not with him, but with Sloane's longtime best friend, troublemaker extraordinaire Naomi. Sloane anticipates a weekend of wine tastings and cozy robes and strategic avoidance of issues she'd rather not confront, like her husband's repeated infidelity. But when they arrive at the rental cottage, it becomes clear Naomi has something else in mind. She wants Sloane to stop letting things happen to her for Sloane to really live. So Naomi orchestrates a wild night out with a group of mysterious strangers, only for it to take a horrifying turn that changes Sloane and Naomi's lives forever. The friends are forced to come to terms with some pretty eternal consequences in this bloody seductive novel about how it's never too late to find satisfaction, even though it might taste different than expected. I have been getting into vampire novels this year, and I would like to try Rachel Harrison out. And those are all the books that I'm interested in the horror category, so let's move into debut novels. And we'll see some overlap from previous categories like Ministry of Time and The Eyes of the Best Part, Welcome to the Hayam Dong Bookshop, Sky Full of Elephants, Martyr, Voyage of the Dam, which I loved. But here's some things that I don't think we've mentioned yet. So, The Things We Didn't Know by Elba Iris Perez. I keep seeing this cover around, and although it's historical fiction, I am interested. It says, Andrea Rodriguez is 9 years old when her mother whisks her and her brother Pablo away from Guanajuato, the tiny Massachusetts factory town that is the only home they've known. With no plan and no money, she leaves them with family in the mountainside villages of Puerto Rico and promises to return. Months later, when Andrea and Pablo are brought back to Massachusetts, they find their hometown significantly changed. As they navigate the rifts between their family's values and an all-American culture in the face of harsh realities of growing up, they must embrace both the triumphs and heartache that mark the journey to adulthood. In a heartfelt, evocative portrait of another side of the life in 1950s America, The Things We Didn't Know establishes Elba Iris Perez as a sensational new literary voice. That sounds incredible. I would love another look at 1950s America that is not just white picket fence suburbia that feels very Leave It to Beaver. The Truth According to Ember by Danica Neva is on my TBR. I want to read this. I actually have a copy of it back here from when Aardvark very kindly sent me a box. I need to get into this. This is the first traditionally published romance by a native author. That is so wild to me. That it's the first one by an indigenous author is crazy. Absolutely wild. I can't believe it took us this long. Why did it take us this long? It says, a Chickasaw woman who can't catch a break serves up a little white lie that snowballs into much more in this witty and irresistible rom-com by debut author Danica Neva. Ember Lee Cardinal has not always been a liar. Well, not for anything that counted at least, but her job search is not going well, and when her resume is rejected for the 37th time, she takes matters in her own hands. She gets creative, listing her qualifications, and answers the ethnicity question on applications with a lie. A half-lie technically. No one wanted Native American Ember, but white Ember has just landed her dream job on Park Avenue, Oklahoma City, that is. Accountant Ember thrives in corporate life, and her love life seems to be looking up too. Daniel Coulson, the IT guy and fellow native who caught her eye on the first day, seems to be actually be interested in her too. Despite her unease over the no dating policy at work, they start to see each other secretly, which somehow makes it even hotter. But when they're caught in a compromising position on a work trip, a scheming colleague blackmails Ember, threatening to expose their relationship. As the manipulation continues to grow, so do Ember's lies. She must make the hard decision, to either stay silent or finally tell the truth, which could cost her everything. This just sounds so good. I also grabbed a audio copy of this from Libro. Can't wait to check it out. I don't know if I talked about Greta and Valden. I just said I had seen the cover when we went over that section, but this follows a brother and sister as they're like navigating their lives. So it's been a year since his ex-boyfriend dumped him and moved from Auckland to Buenos Aires, and Valden is doing fine. He has a good flat with his sister Greta, a good career where his colleagues only occasionally remind him he is the sole Maori person in the office, and a good friend who he only sleeps with when he's sad. But when the work sends him to Argentina and he's thrown back in his former lover's orbit, Valden is forced to confront the feelings he's been trying to ignore and the future he wants. Greta is not letting her painfully unrequited crush or her possibly pointless master's thesis or her pathetic academic salary get her down. She would love to focus on the charming fellow grad student she meets at a party and her friendships with a circle of similarly floundering 20-somethings, but her chaotic family life won't stop. Her mother is keeping secrets, her nephew is having a gay crisis, and her brother has suddenly flown to South America without a word. Sharp, hilarious, and with an undeniable emotional momentum that builds to an exuberant conclusion, Greta and Valden careens us through the siblings' misadventures and the messy dramas of their sprawling, eccentric, Maori, Russian, Catalonian family. What an overlap. That sounds great. So, and then We Used to Live Here, which I just talked about in the horror category. And then we have the audiobooks, which I'm not going to pick anything to read from these, but I think it's worth looking at the category if it'll load. Some of these are Audible originals, which I don't love. But then others, like Just for the Summer, that audio is incredible. I'm sure Whoopi Goldberg's audio is incredible. I know Funny Story is going to be incredible because Julia Whalen's great at her job. Heard great things about First Lie Wins. Richard Osman, not surprised. Listen for the Lie, Amy Tintera, also not surprised. I did like the audio for that for the most part. It has a podcast element, and if you listen to it at the right speed, sounds like you're actually listening to a podcast. James of Percival Everett. That book I've heard is so profound, so I'm not shocked that the audio is in here. All very interesting. So I'm going to skip the last categories because I have no interest in reading any young adult fiction or nonfiction for that matter. Every once in a while I pick one that comes out of that category that really speaks to me, but it's not written for me, and so I'm not going to read it and then rate it low because I'm not having a good time. If something sticks out and then I end up reading it, I will include it in any future content, but as of right now, this is it. So, actually, you know what? That's a lie. We're skipping the young adult, but we're going to jump to nonfiction. I don't know if any of these I'm interested in. I did read Nuclear War by Annie Jacobson earlier this year. That book was wild. Absolutely wild. I'm interested in The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates, but that's the only thing here that I really want to read. And then in memoir, I tried to read Sociopath by Patrick Gagne. Couldn't do it. I got like 4 or 5 chapters in. And then Nepo Baby was just so aggressive all over the page. I just couldn't do it. I Shouldn't Be Telling You This by Chelsea Devantez. I think would go in the comedy category if it still existed. I have that on Libro FM. I will read that eventually. There's Always This Year on Basketball and Ascension by Hanifa Durbkeeb. Anything that man writes, I will read. He could write poetry about the newspaper. He could write poetry about the phone book. He could write poetry about paint drying on walls, and I would read it. I don't even like poetry or short stories. Love his work. Love, love, love his work. Grief is for People by Sloane Crossley. I keep seeing. She has just suffered the loss of her closest friend, and it's just a look at what grief looks like as you're moving through life after that. And so that is on my TBR, but I don't know if I'm going to read it. The Third Gilmore Girl. I loved Gilmore Girls when I first watched it as a teenager. Love you, Kelly Bishop, but I'm not going to read that. Same thing with Lab by Drew Afawalo. I know that that's just going to be a lot of regurgitated feminism that I have known since I was in the 6th grade, and there is nothing wrong with that. There is always places in the market for books like that because there are new generations of young people coming up every day who need to know those things. I just won't be reading that. Knife by Salman Rushdie. Good on him for writing about the experience of being attacked at a reading event like a year and a half ago. I can't read it. I'm so sorry, man. I'm so sorry. Can't do it. And then readers' favorites for history and biography. None of these titles look like anything I would want to read. They just don't. So, I'm not gonna make myself. I have been reading more nonfiction, but I've been really enjoying a lot of backlist titles recently, and I think I'm gonna keep on that trend. So, thank you so much for joining me. Stay tuned for the TBR that's going to come out of these books. That'll be in the next video. But with that being said, give this video a like, subscribe so that way you see when the next video comes out, and I will see you in another video soon.